All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, my friends, it has been a wild 10 days or so for the GameStop story. The stock has soared, it's crashed, Robinhood's trawled trading, then it didn't, so then every other exchange. Hedge funds have neared bankruptcy, and seemingly everyone has a take. The story has captured the imagination of a country which is stuck at home in the middle of a raging pandemic and economic depression, with the firm knowledge that the richest people in our society are doing better than ever, while so many millions are out of work or waiting on a $2,000 check. And at this point, the dust has settled for us to learn some lessons. First and foremost is this: the rage in America is not going anywhere. Some of it manifested in Donald Trump. Some of it you saw years ago in Occupy Wall Street. Some of it was in the Bernie Sanders campaign. Left, right, center, there is a central understanding in the American psyche that the way that things work right now is just not fair. We don't know how to fix it, but we know it in our bones that this isn't right. Now, this was the GameStop story really the perfect situation for justice for that feeling? Let's be honest. No, not really. Yes, Melvin Capital is down 53%, but they live to fight another day. Their main backers are still billionaires. The rest of the other 19 top 20 hedge funds in America are up a collective $63 billion after 2020. Right now, GameStop stock has dropped dramatically, as have many other meme stocks like AMC and Nokia and BlackBerry and others. In other words, playing in the casino means that you lose sometimes. I'm not saying this to dunk on Redditors or anyone who got in, only to say that the way to defeat the ultra-rich in America is not through defeating a single hedge fund on a temporary basis. It's to defeat them for all time to come. People's inclinations that the system is unfair and rigged against them is not wrong. People's inclination that they deserve a slice of the pie is not incorrect. But what I fear is that this story is being hijacked by those with a fundamentally free market libertarian outlook of the world and of our economy and markets. The emerging meta takeaway from a lot of the discourse celebrating the story is one in which it tells young people online who are rightfully angry at seeing their fathers lose their jobs or homes in 2008, watching their personal debt load explode, being unable to leave home, to get married, to have a kid because they have to work hard, is simply to do what the billionaires have done and speculate your way to the top. I fundamentally reject this view because it's actually deeply nihilist in a way. The only actors in our system are not just the ultra-rich and you. We actually have something better. It's called the government. I know a million eyes are rolling out there, but hear me out, because I think this is important. How exactly do you think the ultra-rich got control of everything? Because they are the ones who understand how to manipulate power through donations, through hiring ex-politicians, ex-regulators, creating a revolving door of the American elite. But here's the good news. There is one thing that they don't control, and that is our votes. Even more important, now with the internet, they do not control our ability to donate or organize en masse. What actually inspired me most about the Reddit story is that fundamentally it is one of those online collectively organizing to do damage to a group of elites. There is immense power in that episode. Now imagine this. What if those who made gains on their stock on Reddit decided to come together and donate or organize for politicians who support reining in our hedge fund industry? Or donate or support politicians who want $2,000 checks. Or donate or organize for politicians who want to increase capital gains taxes and crack down on high-frequency traders who front-run retail investors. Or fundamentally just want to support people who want to make people's lives better directly at the expense of the people who've been getting away with this for so long. That's the only way out of this, and I know that's very frustrating for a lot of people to hear. The common response that I've heard to this criticism is that I'm naive and that the system is so corrupt and so thoroughly sold out, there's no point in doing that. I get it. Things are bad. But giving up isn't the answer, and neither is just simply trying to play the elite's game, but in a way that may beat them. Because in one way, the critics are correct in this. In the status quo, just like a casino, the house always wins. Robinhood has raised $3 billion in additional capital after this episode. They're going to be fine. Melvin Capital got a cash injection. Their benefactor Steve Cohen has opened a new fund and is still worth billions. Many of the largest holders of GameStop stock themselves were major street players like BlackRock. They're going to be fine, okay? They do control the current state of affairs. The only way to change things is to exactly through changing the state of affairs themselves, which is only truly possible through government action. The state seems feckless because we have let it get that way. But it wasn't always this way. We've had long periods in our history of people collectively saying that the way things are working are wrong, that too much power is concentrated at the top, and they have demanded from their government that their leaders do more. Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, FDR, JFK, and LBJ. The only way those social and political movements worked was by taking the will of the people and translating it into policy. Now, if someone is telling you otherwise, you should take a look at whether they seek to gain or profit from feeding you nihilism. 9 out of 10 times in the GameStop situation, that's the case. Instead, I propose that we all profit through a better economy and better policy that benefits all of our lives. And while I understand that the political process is slow, boring, and completely sucks, it's riddled with corruption and more, there is always a little bit of tiny hope on the horizon. I point to Georgia as the example. You have 2 Democrats in that state of Georgia with one promise, $2,000 checks in the bank for you. Now, whether they do that or not, that's an open question. But I guarantee you this, if Republicans do beat those senators, it will have to be with the slogan of they promised to give you $2,000 and they didn't, so elect me and I will. Either way, rhetorically, you have won, which is half the battle. Once they make that promise, they can't break it 100%, especially if you hold them accountable. That's the way that we move forward. You change the tone of the debate, and you hold people accountable. You might lose sometimes, most of the times in the beginning. But on the margins, change can happen. Next thing you know, an idea becomes mainstream. From COVID, it's almost cliche at this point to say, all the trends in our economy have been accelerated. Most of the trends are bad things, like opioid debts, or the rich getting richer, or disparities in our healthcare system. But what if we accelerate the trend of Occupy Wall Street and Trump and Bernie and all these other movements out there of people organizing online to demand real change in the real world? If you actually work together, you can do that. So don't give up and let's make everyone rich, at least in their own way, the right way. And that's something that the fundamental takeaway I want to have from this story is, yes, in limited instances, when you all come together, you can defeat these people. But just thinking that that is the way that you're going to win in the long run, that's not going to happen. Like I pointed out, like Steve Cohen's going to be fine. Melvin Capital is going to be fine.
Right.
BlackRock actually made a ton of money off the GameStop stock. Those people are all just as evil, BlackRock even more so, than Melvin Capital. So what's the end solution? There's only one way to do it, and it's through policy. And yeah, I get it. It's hard. Like 98% of the people in Congress and others are bad. But let's make it 97, and then 96. And then maybe one day you have an election where 30% of them get wiped out. It happens every once in a while, every 40, 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
It's hard. Don't get me wrong. It's really difficult. But that's the only way out of this mess.
It was so helpful.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
Well, I'll give you your nihilism and cynicism later.
We'll get to that in our next segment, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. I think the most important thing about what happened with GameStop, because you're right, is it going to fundamentally change power? Any of these people are going to actually suffer in the long term? I'm sure they had a couple bad weeks here, right? But they're going to be fine.
Oh, no. He can't have a vacation house in Brazil.
Right.
Poor guy.
Right, for another year. Then he'll get it. Don't worry about it. And look, our people in D.C., they're going to grandstand. They're going to pretend like you're on their side. They're going to have these hearings or whatever. Nothing's going to... Right. Thank you. Ted Cruz in particular. Nothing's going to happen. Mike Lee. I mean, there's many people you could apply that to. And nothing will ultimately, really change. You recall Joe Biden said, promised these very same people that...
That's right.
Yeah, he would like them to change their behavior a little, but he's not going to do anything from a regulatory standpoint to actually change. So that's sort of the state of affairs, that the most important thing was the expression and the message that it sent to the country and to the elite class of there is all of this energy out there and anger, and people feel, because they're so disconnected, the elites in the country are so disconnected from what's actually going on with regular people. This was the first thing that broke through them of people are screwed, and they're mad about it.
Still mad.
They're mad about it. And they remember the financial crisis. They remember everything that's been done to them, and they're connecting it to us personally right now. That expression is probably the most important thing that comes out of it. And you have a situation, look, the only way out of this, there's two directions. And, one is good and one is bad. One direction is a police state. One direction is where people hate each other and the country is completely divided, and you have to have massive national security state, police forces just to protect you from this fellow citizen that you're terrified of. And that's one direction, and that's frankly the direction that we're heading in right now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I was on Capitol Hill yesterday. It's still unbelievable.
The other direction is, in some ways, it's a terrifying one if you're an elite in this country, which is to actually democratize power and let people, regular people, with all of their, imperfections, have a real say in government and feel like when they vote and when they protest and when they participate in civil society, like those things actually matter.
Yes.
And that comes with sometimes getting results that you don't like, right? And you have to accept that. And Robinhood is kind of the perfect example. And Irami Osei-Frimpong, Funky Academic, made this point on this show. Is they had this shtick of democratizing power, but it was fake because ultimately when something happened they didn't like, they cracked down, they got involved, and it showed you the limits of, no, this was all just a facade that we actually have control in this space. That's a lot of what this country has been, is basically like a facade of democracy, a facade of politicians caring what citizens think. And the more and more that people actually stretch those bounds and see that it's a facade, the more friction and tension and energy you get around actually making a change.
Yeah, and like I said, I know it's hard and it's frustrating. I bet it was, but this is the thing, which is that if people had been nihilists, then AOC never would have beat Joe Crowley, right? And if she hadn't had that hadn't happened, then people like Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman would not have won.
Yeah.
And if people had been nihilists, then George W. Bush would still rule the Republican Party. I'm not saying it went in a great direction and it ended up everything okay, but let's something, maybe from the Phoenix, or from the ashes of Phoenix will rise. Doubtful currently, or at least it's going to take a long time. But disruption and all of that can seem extraordinarily difficult at the beginning, and then it can just snowball. And soon, and you don't know how that's going to happen. People fought for 25 years in order to regulate Wall Street, utilities, and all these others before the New Deal. And then one day, they had their chance. Same thing whenever it came to the civil rights movement. It took 30, 40 years of action where it just seemed like nothing was going to happen.
Totally impossible.
One day, the dam just breaks. It just breaks. So you have to be ready for that, and just don't give up, because it's the only way. Look, you can't Robin Hood your way out of this. People thought Robin Hood was the way that they democratized finance. Turns out Robin Hood just sells all your data to Wall Street and the high-frequency traders who front-run your trades and charge us all more money. It's like you can try and build a new financial product. Where are you going to get the money? From the banks? They're not going to lend you something if it's legitimately like a check. The only thing that can check a bank is the Treasury Department. And I think that more people need to understand that.
Yeah, even in that space that you imagined was a democratic,
it's not.
Free zone, it's not, because ultimately the big guys have everything rigged.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next on Rising, our super panel, Michael Starr-Hopkins, Marsha Kosloff. They're going to talk Senator Joe Manchin versus the minimum wage increase. That's when Rising returns.